From MK Ultra to rumors of contact with extraterrestrials, the CIA has had its fair share of its controversies. But one of their projects that is a lot less well known is the Stargate program. Today we are going to be looking more in depth into what the program entailed, and even into the lives of the people involved. In 1970, during the Cold War, the CIA believed that the Soviet Union was doing psychic research and was spending nearly 60 million rubles each year on the program, which is equivalent to a little over $10 million at the time in US currency. In response to the claims that the Soviets had produced results, the CIA started funding for a new program known as C.I.A, also known as Scan by Coordinate. The program branched out into remote viewing research in 1972. The goal for the research was a minimum accuracy rating of 65%. Ingo Swann, one of the people involved in the program, was a psychic employed by the CIA. He was a self-proclaimed remote viewer who also exhibited other psychic phenomena such as psychokinesis. Swann was involved in one of C.I.A's crowning achievements. In 1973, he and fellow CIA remote viewer Harold Sherman were sent to Jupiter. While Swann was monitored by CIA personnel somewhere in an institute in California, Sherman was relaxing in a specially built sensory deprivation tank at his home, hundreds of miles and 2 time zones away. Upon comparing their stories afterward by phone, Swann and Sherman were shocked to find that the remote viewing sessions contained the same major details, even though no close-up photos had ever been taken of Jupiter at the time. They both correctly identified the Great Red Spot and the vast dark cloud which trails behind it. They reported that there were endless fields of suspending crystals glittering among the vast billowing clouds. The crystals reflected both the light of the sun and that of the electric storms on Jupiter's surface. Swann estimated that the surface lay some 120,000 miles below the clouds. The clouds themselves had many layers. The first photos taken of Jupiter by NASA in 1979 would confirm a number of these statements. This was one of the reasons the program gained funding, and the project fully came into place 6 years later and was named the Stargate program in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland, to investigate the potential for psychic phenomenon in the military. With a budget of $20 million per year, twice the budget of Russia, the Stargate project would work primarily involving remote viewing, the ability to see events and sights or information from a great distance in one's own mind. Work results would be reviewed, with the results being kept secret from the subject. It was thought that if the subject was shown they were incorrect, it would damage their confidence and skill. This was standard operating procedure throughout the years of military and domestic remote viewing programs. Feedback to the remote viewer of any kind was rare. It was kept classified and secret. Although the accuracy of these remote viewings have been highly debated, here is some of the more interesting results from some of the test subjects. The first subject was only declassified as Subject 52. Subject 52 was given geographical coordinates to get started. The goal of the experiment was to get Subject 52 to successfully describe a particular object, a silver Navajo necklace stored some distance away. Subject 52 described a complex scene unfolding before her eyes. Unfamiliar architecture framed a foreign-looking left-handed craftsman who was hard at work, making none other than a beautiful gold or steel chain. The second subject, Subject 12, was sent to Saturn's moon Titan. She reported seeing a base on Titan's surface. Entering the base, the remote viewer found to her astonishment that all the operators of the base were identical to human beings. She observed 2 young, healthy males working at a control panel supervised by an attractive female. In the same document, the subject describes 2 other sessions, this time on Earth. When sent to Mount Hayes in Alaska, the remote viewer reported seeing two entities working outside a structure. Inside the structure, the remote viewer came across a human-looking technician working at a strange machine. The technician could see the remote viewer and invited her to take a look at the apparatus. An even stranger scene met our remote viewer when taking a look at a site somewhere in the southern hemisphere. An inhuman robot-like creature and a hairless, pale humanoid entity that was aware of her presence. But by far one of the most famous viewings in the program came from subject number 1, also known as Joe McMoneagle. Joe is best known for his claims surrounding the investigation of remote viewing and the use of paranormal abilities for military intelligence gathering. His interests also include near-death experiences, out-of-body travel, and unidentified flying objects. Joe describes a remarkable memory of his very early childhood events. He grew up surrounded by alcoholism, abuse, and poverty. As a child, he had visions at night when scared, and began to hone his psychic ability in his teens for his own protection when he hitchhiked. He enlisted in the Army in 1964 at the age of 18 to get away from his family turmoil. Joe's early military career was as an NCO, and he retired after 20 years as a chief warrant officer. He was severely injured in a helicopter accident in Vietnam. He was involved in intelligence work for 15 years. From 1978, he was known as Remote Viewer Number 1 at Project Stargate and was among the first of the personnel recruited for the project. According to Joe, remote viewing is possible and accurate outside the boundaries of time. He believes he has remote viewed into the past, present, and future, and has even predicted future events. Among the things he claims to have remote viewed are a Chinese nuclear facility, the Irani hostage crisis, the Red Brigades, and Muammar Gaddafi. During the Cold War, Joe was able to perceive details, which were later confirmed by satellite imaging, of a new type of Russian nuclear Typhoon-class submarine being constructed in 1979, based simply on coordinates provided to him. The submarine was one of the largest ever built, and when he described its magnitude to military engineers, he was scoffed at. But in mid-January 1980, satellite photos confirmed these predictions. Joe was one person in a key group of remote viewers for the CIA that focused on military targets, missing persons, and occasionally attempts to see into different time periods. But those attempts were all mundane compared to an unexpected otherworldly journey he would take in 1984. He was awakened from a nap and given a sealed envelope that couldn't be opened until the end of his viewing session, during which his colleague dictated coordinates for him to view. Soon, Joe found himself astral projecting to an unfamiliar landscape. When Joe went into his viewing state, he described a world inhabited by a civilization in dire shape. He described seeing an infrastructure consisting of intersecting roads, aqueducts, channels, and pyramids. The transcript is interesting and describes a baffled Joe who often struggles to report the raw data his colleague is consistently reminding him to stay focused on. Throughout the viewing, his astonishment overtakes him, leading to silent periods, sometimes lasting as long as 30 minutes, trying to maintain his focus. Joe reported seeing an old sandy pyramid so tall it boggled his mind, later estimated to be some 12 miles high, which emerged from a deep depression in the ground. Vast storms swirl across the sky. It seems a cataclysm has occurred, and vague forms of gigantic thin people can be made out. When Joe eventually reports contact with living entities, his colleague tells him to initiate conversation with him. He describes their situation as being in a critical state, seemingly on the brink of an apocalypse. The people having apparently sent members of their civilization on a mission to find a new place to inhabit. These tall shadowed figures appear to be in a state of hibernation, awaiting the return of their search party. When he asks if these entities can perceive him, they describe him as something of a hallucination. Joe then fizzled out, and as he returned to his body, he opened his envelope to see where he had supposedly projected, to which was Mars approximately 1 million years ago. His main area of focus was later revealed to be the Cydonia region of Mars. Two unexplained geological formations on this barren Martian plain were first photographed by the Viking 1 spacecraft in 1976. The face on Mars, and a mysterious mountain that eerily resembles a giant pyramid. The accuracy of Joe's remote viewing varied across the board from 5 to 95%, to some claiming between 65 to 75%. Joe claims that remote viewing is not always accurate, but that it is able to locate hostages and downed airplanes. Of other psychics, he says that 98% of them are frauds. In 1995, funding for the Stargate program was terminated, and the unit was decommissioned after the officials found that no discernible benefit had been established. Information provided by the program was vague and included massive amounts of irrelevant data. Joe says the remote viewing program was ended partially due to stigma. Everybody wanted to use it, but nobody wanted to be caught dead standing next to it.
There's an automatic ridicule factor. Anybody associated with it could kiss their career goodbye.
Ray Heyman, one of the CIA psychologists who was very critical of the program, put this dialogue in his review in 1995.
Psychologists such as myself who study subjective validation find nothing striking or surprising in the reported matching of reports against targets in the Stargate data. The overwhelming amount of data generated by the viewers is vague, general, and way off target. The few apparent hits are just what we would expect, if nothing other than reasonable guessing and subjective validation.
The final report found reason to suspect that in some well-publicized cases of dramatic hits, the remote viewers might have had substantially more background information than might have otherwise been apparent. The CIA terminated the $20 million project, citing a lack of documented evidence that the program had any value to the intelligence community. Joe became a speaker at the Monroe Institute, where he had previously been sent as part of his remote viewing training. Joe then ran a remote viewing business aimed at the corporate world called Intuitive Intelligence Applications Inc. His services included that he could help a wildcatter find an oil well or a quarry operator know where to mine. It was largely successful. He also authored several books, including Mind Trek: Exploring Consciousness, Time and Space Through Remote Viewing, and Memoirs of a Psychic Spy: The Remarkable Life of U.S. Remote Viewer Number 1. But now I want to know what you guys believe. Do you believe in remote viewing and the reports from these subjects? Or is it all a load of crap? Do you think the CIA really terminated this program? Or is it still going on behind the scenes? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe for more great content. We do all the research so you don't have to. And as always, I'm Alex, and I hope you have a fantastic day.
And it cuts deeper than the roots of the trees that we planted in the graveyard. I don't think these scars will ever fade off. Good thing nothing seems to faze us. So numb, we've become so numb. How'd we get